Breaking Down Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Dweck, Chapter 1. The Two Mindsets, Fixed versus Growth. When I first picked up Mindset by Dweck, the whole idea seemed simple. People either believe they can grow or they don't. But when you really think about it, that belief runs deep. It shapes how we deal with pressure, failure, success, and even relationships. Dweck calls these two ways of thinking the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And this first chapter lays the foundation for everything that follows. Let me break it down the way I understood it. People with a fixed mind think their intelligence, talent, and abilities are set in stone. You either have it or you don't. They believe you're born with a certain amount of skill, and that's it. So if they fail, it's not just a mistake. It feels like proof that they're not good enough. That's why they avoid challenges, play it safe, and crave validation. Their whole sense of worth depends on being seen as smart or talented. Now, on the other hand, there's the growth mindset. This one believes skills and intelligence are things you build through effort, strategy, and persistence. In other words, talent might give you a head start, but what really matters is what you do with it. People with this mindset see challenges as opportunities, not threats. They're not scared to fail because they understand failure is part of progress. It sounds obvious, but it's crazy how often we don't live this way. Think about school, how we're rewarded for being the best, not for improving. You get an A, people say you're smart. You fail, people say you're not trying. Over time, that trains you to chase approval instead of mastery. You stop learning to learn. You learn to look good. That's the trap of the fixed mindset. And Dweck's point here is that this mindset shows up everywhere, and not just in classrooms. It's in business, sports, relationships, even how you talk to yourself. The voice in your head that says, "You're just not the type of person who can do that," that's the fixed mindset talking. But here's where it hit me personally. People often mix up confidence with a fixed mindset. They think being confident means believing you're great. But real confidence comes from knowing you can get better. If your confidence depends on being the best, it'll crumble the second you're not. Growth mindset confidence is different. It's built on faith in your ability to learn, adapt, and improve no matter what. The author gives tons of examples, from kids solving puzzles to athletes at the top of their game, but what stood out to me most was how subtle these mindsets are. You can have a growth mindset in one area and a fixed one in another. Maybe you believe you can get better in your career, but when it comes to relationships or fitness, you think, "I'm just not that type." That's how the author gives tons of examples, from kids solving puzzles to athletes at the top of their game. But what stood out to me most was how subtle these mindsets are. You can have a growth mindset in one area and a fixed one in another. Maybe you believe you can get better in your career, but when it comes to relationships or fitness, you think, "I'm just not that type." That's how the fixed mindset hides, in your excuses. So the goal isn't to be all growth mindset all the time. It's about recognizing when that fixed voice shows up. The one that tells you to stay comfortable, not risk embarrassment, or protect your image. When you hear it, you don't have to argue with it. Just notice it and move forward anyway. That's how the shift starts. Here's another powerful idea from this chapter. People in a fixed mindset see effort as something only non-talented people need. They think, if I were really good, I wouldn't have to try. But people with a growth mindset see effort as the only path to mastery. They're not afraid of hard work because they understand effort is what transforms potential into skill. To me, that changes everything. Because if you truly believe that talent and intelligence can be developed, then you stop being afraid of looking dumb, of starting late, or of failing in front of others. You stop trying to prove yourself and start trying to improve yourself. And that mindset shift opens doors that raw talent never could. The chapter ends with a simple but powerful truth. Mindset is a choice. You can decide to adopt the belief that you can grow. It's not fake positivity or wishful thinking. It's a practical strategy. Because if you act like you can learn and improve, your brain literally rewires itself to make that true. That's not motivation talk. That's neuroscience. So here's how I'd sum up this chapter in my own words. The fixed mindset says, I have to prove myself. The growth mindset says, I can improve myself. And the difference between the two? It's the difference between playing small and building the kind of life that actually evolves. Chapter 2, Inside the Mindsets. Now that you get the basic idea of the two mindsets, fixed and growth, this chapter dives deeper into what actually goes on inside those two ways of thinking. Because it's not just about what people say they believe, it's about how they see the world. The fixed mindset isn't just a theory, it's a full operating system. It runs everything from how you interpret failure to how you react to someone else's success. And once you recognize the patterns, you start seeing it everywhere, in yourself, in your coworkers, even in the people you date. The fixed mindset isn't just a theory, it's a full operating system. It runs everything from how you interpret failure to how you react to someone else's success. And once you recognize the patterns, you start seeing it everywhere, in yourself, in your coworkers, even in the people you date. Here's how it plays out. People with a fixed mindset are obsessed with judgment. Every situation becomes a test, a way to prove whether you're smart, talented, or good enough. If they do something well, it's validation. See, I am special. But if they fail, it's a personal attack on their identity. Maybe I'm not who I thought I was. That's the dangerous part. A fixed mindset doesn't allow for neutral experiences. Everything becomes personal. If someone criticizes your work, you don't hear, here's how to improve. You hear, you're not capable. And the crazy thing is, people often think this mindset is what drives ambition. Like, if I hold myself to high standards, I'll push harder. But it's actually the opposite. When you tie your worth to being perfect, you stop taking risks. You protect your image instead of pursuing growth. You avoid the unknown because it could expose you. Now, the growth mindset sees things differently. To someone in a growth mindset, failure doesn't define you, it informs you. Criticism becomes feedback, effort becomes investment, and challenges become practice grounds. They're not sitting around worrying about looking smart. They're focused on getting better. When I read that part, it made me think of athletes I've seen at the top of their game. The great ones aren't obsessed with proving themselves. They're obsessed with improving themselves. They're curious about their weaknesses. They study their losses. They don't see failure as humiliation. They see it as data. That's a mindset built for longevity. Meanwhile, people in a fixed mindset burn out faster. They can't handle setbacks because setbacks threaten their identity. It's like their ego can't take the hit. They'd rather stay comfortable than look like a beginner again. I've seen this in creative work too, especially in tattooing. Some artists plateau after a few years. They get good enough, gain followers, and stop experimenting. They stick to what works because trying something new might make them look like amateurs again. That's the fixed mindset in disguise. But the ones who keep growing, the ones whose art keeps evolving, they don't care about looking perfect. They care about getting sharper. They'll take the criticism, try new tools, mess up designs, and learn from it. That's growth in motion. Dweck also talks about how these mindsets influence how we see other people. A fixed mindset person sees others' success as a threat. If someone's doing better, it makes them feel smaller, like there's less room for them to shine. They think success is limited, like there's only one spotlight. Dweck also talks about how these mindsets influence how we see other people. A fixed mindset person sees others' success as a threat. If someone's doing better, it makes them feel smaller, like there's less room for them to shine. They think success is limited, like there's only one spotlight. But in the growth mindset, someone else's success is just proof that more is possible. It's inspiration, not competition. Because if skill can be developed, then their win doesn't take away from yours. It just raises the bar. Here's where it gets personal. Both mindsets live inside all of us. You're not 100% one or the other. Some days you're curious and open, growth mode. Other days you're defensive, frustrated, trying to protect your ego. That's the fixed mindset taking over. The key is awareness. You can't change what you don't notice. Once you start catching yourself in those fixed moments, when you avoid feedback or judge yourself for not being perfect, you can pause and choose differently. One thing that stood out to me in this chapter was how early this conditioning starts. Dweck explains that kids begin forming these beliefs about ability from the messages they hear. You're so smart versus you worked hard on that might sound similar, but they build two completely different frameworks. One tells the kid that success equals talent. The other tells them success equals effort. That's a huge difference. Because if you grow up thinking your worth depends on being naturally gifted, you'll fear anything that challenges that image. But if you grow up believing effort is power, you'll chase harder goals without worrying how it looks. This part hit home, because as adults, we're still running those same scripts. The difference is, now we have the awareness to rewrite them. Here's the truth. The growth mindset doesn't mean you'll always win. It just means you won't quit when you lose. It's about staying in the game long enough to adapt, to refine, to figure it out. In this chapter, Dweck makes it clear. Mindsets aren't just ideas. They shape reality. They change how we interpret events, how we react emotionally, and how we build our identity. So here's my takeaway. The fixed mindset is about preserving your image. The growth mindset is about expanding your potential. One keeps you safe, the other makes you strong. The question you've got to ask yourself isn't, which mindset do I have? It's, which one do I choose to feed today? Chapter 3, The Truth About Ability and Accomplishment. This chapter hits right at the ego, because it forces you to question what talent really means. We grow up thinking some people are just born gifted, like success is written into their DNA. Carol Dweck completely dismantles that idea here. This chapter hits right at the ego, because it forces you to question what talent really means. We grow up thinking some people are just born gifted, like success is written into their DNA. Carol Dweck completely dismantles that idea here. She basically says, what we call natural talent is usually just the result of passion, discipline, and consistent effort over time. But because people love shortcuts, they label greatness as genius, so they don't have to face how much work it really takes. Let's be real. That's the lazy way of looking at success. The fixed mindset treats ability like a birthright. You either have it or you don't. If you're good at something right away, it proves you're special. If you struggle, it must mean you're not cut out for it. That's why people in this mindset often give up early. They think effort is what untalented people do. The growth mindset, though, sees ability as something that can be built. You don't start good, you become good. You earn it through time, repetition, and grit. And once you start seeing things that way, your entire perspective on achievement changes. Dweck uses a lot of examples here, athletes, musicians, business leaders, and what ties all of them together is that the real winners didn't rely on talent alone. They were relentless about improvement. They focused on the process, not the praise. You can see this everywhere. Look at sports. The naturally gifted athletes usually dominate early. They move smoother, react faster, and everyone calls them the next big thing. But the ones who last, those are the grinders, the ones who stay late after practice, who study their tape, who come back stronger after a loss. Talent might open the door, but only effort keeps you in the room. Here's something that stuck with me. People in a fixed mindset hate effort because it challenges their identity. If they have to try hard, it means they're not naturally great. So they'll avoid struggle to protect their ego, even if it means they never reach their potential. That's a dangerous trap, because success in the real world doesn't care how gifted you are. It rewards people who put in consistent, intelligent work over time. It reminds me of tattooing. When I started, I saw artists who were insanely talented from the start. Their line work looked effortless. But some of those same guys plateaued because they got comfortable. They relied on their natural skill and stopped pushing. Meanwhile, the artists who obsessed over getting better, the ones who studied technique, asked for feedback, and practiced nonstop, they surpassed everyone. That's exactly what Dweck means when she says, ability grows through mindset. Another key part of this chapter is how society feeds the wrong message. We glorify genius. We love the myth of the prodigy. You rarely hear about the hours of grind that went into it, just the highlight reel. So people grow up believing that if you weren't amazing right away, you're not meant for it. Another key part of this chapter is how society feeds the wrong message. We glorify genius. We love the myth of the prodigy. You rarely hear about the hours of grind that went into it, just the highlight reel. So people grow up believing that if you weren't amazing right away, you're not meant for it. That mindset kills more potential than failure ever could. Dweck flips that idea on its head. She explains that the greatest performers in any field are obsessed with learning. They study the craft like students, not stars. They stay humble enough to admit what they don't know. That humility is a superpower, because when you stop pretending you know it all, you open yourself up to grow. Here's the truth that most people don't want to face. Talent without effort dies fast. But effort without talent, if sustained long enough, turns into mastery. The growth mindset is what keeps that transformation alive. Now, this doesn't mean talent isn't real. Some people do have natural advantages, better genetics, sharper instincts, faster reflexes. But even those advantages fade if they're not developed. The real edge isn't in being gifted, it's in being obsessed enough to maximize what you've got. That's where accomplishment comes from. Dweck makes another powerful point. When you're in a fixed mindset, you focus on proving you're special. When you're in a growth mindset, you focus on becoming exceptional. The first one is about ego. The second is about purpose. So if you're wondering how to tell which mindset you're in, ask yourself this. When something challenges you, a project, a skill, a setback, do you feel exposed or excited? If you feel exposed, you're trying to protect an image. If you feel excited, you're trying to evolve. That's the difference. This chapter also digs into the myth that ability alone leads to success. In reality, it's how you use your ability that counts. Two people can have the same talent, but the one with the growth mindset will always outperform long-term because they treat failure as training, not judgment. It's not about being naturally great. It's about being consistently improving. So here's how I'd sum it up. The fixed mindset says, I need to prove I'm talented. The growth mindset says, I need to keep improving my craft. And when you start thinking that way, every failure, every criticism, every late night, they stop being threats to your identity. They become the fuel that sharpens it. That's the truth about ability and accomplishment. Greatness isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. Chapter 4 bars the mindset of a champion. If there's any field where mindset becomes brutally obvious, it's sports. You can't hide behind excuses when you're out there competing. The scoreboard tells the truth. This chapter is where Carol Dweck shows how mindset separates those who burn bright and fade fast from those who rise, stay hungry, and dominate for years. I'll be real. Reading this made me think of every so-called naturally gifted athlete who disappeared after a couple seasons. The fixed mindset kills more potential in sports than injury ever could. Dweck's message is clear. Raw talent isn't what makes champions. Mindset does. Let's break that down. In the fixed mindset, athletes believe their talent defines them. If they win, it's proof they're gifted. If they lose, it's proof they're not. That's why a lot of young prodigies collapse when the pressure rises. They're not used to struggle. They've built their identity around being the best, not getting better. They play to protect their image, not to grow their game. And when they hit a wall, instead of adapting, they start making excuses, blaming the coach, the team, or bad luck. Because admitting they need to work harder feels like admitting they're not naturally great. That's ego over growth. Then there's the growth mindset athlete. They see their craft as a never-ending process. They love the grind. Losing doesn't humiliate them. It motivates them. They don't ask, am I good enough? They ask, how do I get better? That's the difference between someone who peaks early and someone who stays dominant. Dweck uses real stories like Michael Jordan, who's basically the perfect example of the growth mindset. Everyone remembers the highlight reel, but few remember he didn't even make his high school varsity team at first. Most people would have taken that as a sign they weren't good enough. Jordan took it as fuel. He trained harder, studied every angle, and turned that rejection into obsession. He wasn't chasing validation, he was building a legacy. That's what the growth mindset does. It gives you emotional endurance. You don't break when things get tough, you adapt. Now, what's interesting is how coaches play into this. Fixed mindset coaches often kill their team's growth without realizing it. They value star players, who make them look good instead of developing the ones who are struggling but hungry. They reward talent and overlook effort. But the best coaches, the ones who build dynasties, they care about mindset more than skill. Now, what's interesting is how coaches play into this. Fixed mindset coaches often kill their team's growth without realizing it. They value star players, who make them look good instead of developing the ones who are struggling but hungry. They reward talent and overlook effort. But the best coaches, the ones who build dynasties, they care about mindset more than skill. They teach players how to think, not just how to play. Think about Phil Jackson coaching the Bulls or the Lakers. He didn't just focus on plays, he focused on mentality, on discipline, on self-awareness. That's what allows teams full of stars to work as a unit. Because in sports, ego destroys chemistry, and chemistry wins championships. Another thing Dweck explains is how athletes with a growth mindset handle failure differently. A fixed mindset player sees failure as humiliation. They'll avoid big moments because they don't want to be the reason the team loses. A growth mindset player wants the ball when the game's on the line, not because they're cocky, but because they want the experience. Win or lose, they know that's how they evolve. I've seen that same pattern in life. Whether it's business, art, or personal goals, most people only play when the odds are safe. The few who grow are the ones willing to take the shot, fail in public, and learn fast. Dweck also points out that talent can actually become a trap. When you're praised too early, you start believing the myth that you're naturally superior. That's why some athletes lose their fire once they've made it. They stop putting in the work that got them there. Champions, on the other hand, are never satisfied. Even at the top, they still train like underdogs. They don't see success as a finish line. They see it as a checkpoint. That's a lesson anyone can apply because mindset doesn't just shape performance, it shapes longevity. The growth mindset isn't about constant positivity. It's about constant progression. It's waking up after a loss and saying, all right, that's what I need to work on next. It's falling short and not letting that define your worth. To me, this chapter drives home a truth that applies way beyond sports. Winners focus on learning. Losers focus on looking like winners. When you chase status, you plateau. When you chase growth, you evolve. So here's the real formula for greatness. According to Dweck, and honestly, from experience, I agree 100%. Talent might get you noticed, but mindset keeps you rising. Ego might make you shine, but humility makes you unstoppable. That's what separates the highlight players from the legendary ones. In the end, sports just make it obvious. But this chapter isn't really about athletes, it's about all of us. Because whatever your field is, you're competing every day against your own mindset. And the real victory comes when you choose the mindset that keeps you growing, even when no one's watching. In the end, sports just make it obvious. But this chapter isn't really about athletes, it's about all of us. Because whatever your field is, you're competing every day against your own mindset. And the real victory comes when you choose the mindset that keeps you growing, even when no one's watching. That's the mindset of a champion. Chapter 5, Business, Mindset and Leadership. This chapter dives into one of my favorite topics, how mindset shapes success in business and leadership. Because in the real world, it's not just about being smart or having great ideas, it's about how you handle growth, competition, and people. And that's where the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset becomes brutally obvious. Carol Dweck explains how entire companies, not just individuals, can run on one mindset or the other. And you can see it. Some businesses thrive under pressure, keep evolving, and adapt fast. Others get stuck protecting their image, playing defense instead of offense. The difference comes down to leadership mentality. Let's start with the fixed mindset in business. This kind of leader believes success proves how smart they are. They want to look like the genius in the room, the visionary. Their ego's tied to being right, not to getting better. So they build a culture where people are scared to challenge them, scared to make mistakes, scared to look less than perfect. On the surface, it looks like control. But underneath, it's fear. And fear kills innovation. These are the leaders who'd rather protect their title than grow the company. They hire people who won't outshine them. They take credit for wins, and when things go wrong, they start pointing fingers. It's not about the mission, it's about image management. You see this all the time in corporate culture. Everyone's walking on eggshells, doing whatever keeps the boss happy, not what actually moves the company forward. That's the fixed mindset at scale. Now let's talk about growth mindset leadership. A growth mindset leader doesn't need to be the smartest person in the room. They just need to build the smartest team. They see potential everywhere and want to develop it. Their job isn't to protect their position. It's to elevate everyone around them. They don't see mistakes as threats. They see them as data. If something fails, they ask, what can we learn from this? Not, who do we blame for this? That kind of leadership builds trust, and trust builds momentum. You look at great leaders, people who built empires, and the pattern's the same. They're obsessed with progress, not perfection. They adapt fast, they take feedback seriously, and they surround themselves with people who challenge them. You look at great leaders, people who built empires, and the pattern's the same. They're obsessed with progress, not perfection. They adapt fast, they take feedback seriously, and they surround themselves with people who challenge them. One of the biggest lessons from this chapter is that a company's mindset mirrors its leader's mindset. If the boss operates out of fear, everyone under them plays it safe. But if the leader operates out of curiosity and growth, people take risks, experiment, and innovate. That's how businesses stay alive long-term. Dweck gives examples of companies that fell apart because of fixed thinking. Executives who refuse to change, who believe their past success guaranteed their future. It's a dangerous illusion. In business, once you stop evolving, you're done. Think about it. Look at Blockbuster, Kodak, BlackBerry. They had all the resources, but they got arrogant. They believed they were too good to fail. That's textbook fixed mindset thinking. They stopped asking questions and started protecting their image. Meanwhile, competitors with growth mindsets, like Netflix or Apple, kept adapting, kept learning, and changed entire industries. It's not luck, it's mindset. The same goes for people working inside a business. A fixed mindset employee will play it safe, avoid feedback, and do just enough to not get criticized. A growth mindset employee will take initiative, ask questions, and constantly look for ways to add more value. Over time, those are the people who become leaders. Another key idea here is how mindset affects how we define success. In a fixed mindset, success is about proving you're better, higher rank, bigger paycheck, more recognition. In a growth mindset, success is about building something bigger than yourself. It's not about showing off what you know. It's about multiplying what you know through others. That shift from ego to purpose changes everything. I've seen this dynamic play out in creative industries too. You can spot a fixed mindset shop right away. The boss takes all the credit, the environment feels tense, and people are constantly afraid of messing up. But in a growth mindset shop, everyone's contributing ideas. People share what they've learned. There's energy, momentum, and mutual respect. That's the kind of culture that lasts. Dweck's point is simple but powerful. Leadership isn't about knowing it all. It's about staying open enough to keep learning. The leaders who think they've arrived are already on their way down. The ones who keep asking questions are the ones who keep climbing. And that doesn't just apply to CEOs. Whether you run a company, a team, or just your own career, your mindset determines your trajectory. Here's how I'd sum it up. A fixed mindset leader wants to look important. A growth mindset leader wants to make an impact. Here's how I'd sum it up. A fixed mindset leader wants to look important. A growth mindset leader wants to make an impact. One builds their ego. The other builds their legacy. That's the kind of leadership that moves the needle in business and in life. Chapter 6, Relationships. Mindsets in love or not. This chapter hit differently because it's not about business or talent anymore. It's about the way we handle love, trust, and connection. Relationships are the one area where our mindset can quietly make or break everything, and Dweck makes that crystal clear. The way you think, whether fixed or growth, doesn't stop at your work ethic. It shows up in how you argue, how you forgive, and how you stay committed when things get hard. Let's start with the basics. In a fixed mindset, people believe that personality and compatibility are set in stone. Either you click or you don't. Either they're your soulmate or they're not. So when things start to go wrong, someone with a fixed mindset sees it as proof that the relationship was never meant to be. They pull away, blame the other person, or start searching for someone new instead of trying to grow with who they have. In a growth mindset, the belief is completely different. Love isn't something you find once and it's perfect forever. It's something you build. It's the product of communication, patience, and work. You're not looking for a flawless partner. You're looking for someone willing to learn, evolve, and meet you halfway as you both grow into better versions of yourselves. That's the big shift. A fixed mindset wants perfection. A growth mindset wants progress. Now, Dweck points out something subtle but powerful, the idealization trap. In the early stages of love, it's easy to see your partner through a lens of fantasy. You project perfection onto them. You ignore the small flaws and red flags. But the moment that illusion cracks, when reality sets in, the fixed mindset gets defensive. They start thinking, they've changed, or this isn't what I signed up for. In truth, the only thing that changed was your perception. Reality finally showed up. In contrast, a growth-oriented person understands that the honeymoon phase is temporary. They expect change, they welcome it, because they know real intimacy starts when you see each other fully, imperfections and all, and still choose to keep showing up. That's maturity. That's real love. Another big part of this chapter dives into how we deal with conflict. People with a fixed mindset tend to take criticism in relationships very personally. They see feedback as an attack on their character. You're saying I'm not good enough. So they get defensive, shut down, or turn it back around on their partner. It becomes about winning the argument instead of understanding each. Another big part of this chapter dives into how we deal with conflict. People with a fixed mindset tend to take criticism in relationships very personally. They see feedback as an attack on their character. You're saying I'm not good enough. So they get defensive, shut down, or turn it back around on their partner. It becomes about winning the argument instead of understanding each other. People with a growth mindset, on the other hand, don't treat conflict like a threat. They treat it like feedback. They ask, what's this showing me about myself? How can we handle this better next time? That shift from ego to evolution changes everything. You stop trying to be right and start trying to get it right. One part of the book I really liked was when Dweck explained how some people see love as a test. Like if it's true love, It'll be easy and you'll never fight, you'll just know. That's fantasy. The truth is, every strong relationship has had to survive tough conversations, mismatched expectations, and moments where both people had to swallow their pride. If you've never had to rebuild after a misunderstanding, your relationship hasn't been tested yet. Another thing she gets into is revenge versus repair. When people in a fixed mindset feel hurt, they often want to strike back through silence, sarcasm, or passive aggression. They think it restores their power. But really, it just builds resentment. Growth mindset, people don't run from emotional discomfort. They face it, talk it out, and look for solutions. They understand that forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It's about letting go of ego so the relationship can keep moving forward. Now, let's talk about self-worth. Dweck explains that fixed mindset individuals often attach their value to being desired, admired, or needed. So when their partner loses interest, they feel worthless. Growth-minded people, on the other hand, have a solid internal foundation. They don't need constant validation to feel worthy. They choose their partner every day, but they also know they can stand strong alone. That balance, love without dependency, is rare and powerful. One of my biggest personal takeaways from this chapter is that love should elevate you, not inflate you. The right relationship pushes you to grow, not just feel good. It challenges your habits, your insecurities, and your ability to communicate. If you're with someone who never holds you accountable, that's not love. That's comfort. And here's something to reflect on. When you hit a rough patch in love, do you shut down or do you dig in? Do you try to protect your pride or protect the relationship? Because one of those paths leads to growth and the other leads to regret. At the end of the day, Dweck's message is simple but deep. Real love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who challenges you, supports you, and grows with you. The fixed mindset wants to possess love. The growth mindset wants to build it. At the end of the day, Dweck's message is simple but deep. Real love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who challenges you, supports you, and grows with you. The fixed mindset wants to possess love. The growth mindset wants to build it. And the truth is, that kind of love is rare because it takes two people who are both willing to do the work. But when you find it, it's solid, it's honest, it's worth everything. Chapter 7, Parents, Teachers, and Coaches, Where Mindsets Come From. This is the chapter that really digs into how mindsets are formed, where they start, how they're shaped, and why so many of us grow up carrying either a fixed or growth belief system without even realizing it. It's not just about kids or parenting. It's about the voices that built the way you see yourself today. Carol Dweck shows that our mindset doesn't appear out of thin air. It's built piece by piece through praise, feedback, and the expectations people place on us when we're young. The words that stick with you, the ones from your parents, teachers, or coaches, they become part of your inner voice. Let's start with praise because that's one of the biggest factors. Most people think encouragement is always positive, but that's not true. If you tell a kid, "You're so smart," every time they succeed, you're actually feeding a fixed mindset. It sounds supportive, but the message underneath is, your success comes from being naturally gifted. So what happens when that same kid fails? They panic. They think, maybe I'm not smart after all. They start avoiding challenges to protect their image instead of embracing them to grow. Now compare that to a kid who's told, "I like how hard you worked on that." That simple shift from praising ability to praising effort changes everything. It teaches them that success is something they can control. They'll start to see effort as a strength, not a sign of weakness. This doesn't stop at childhood. Even as adults, we still crave validation. We want to hear we're talented, attractive, successful. But if our confidence depends on people constantly feeding us that, we're fragile. The moment life doesn't affirm us, we crumble. That's why Dweck's point about how praise builds mindset hits hard. Because the wrong kind of praise can build a house on sand. Now, let's talk about parents and teachers as mirrors. They reflect back what they believe about you. If they believe you're capable of improvement, they'll push you. They'll hold you accountable. But if they secretly think you have limits, you'll sense that, and you'll start living down to those expectations. That's one of the most dangerous things about fixed mindsets. They're contagious. A teacher who believes intelligence is fixed will treat some students like naturals and others like hopeless cases. And both groups end up boxed in by those labels. They reflect back what they believe about you. If they believe you're capable of improvement, they'll push you. They'll hold you accountable. But if they secretly think you have limits, you'll sense that, and you'll start living down to those expectations. That's one of the most dangerous things about fixed mindsets. They're contagious. A teacher who believes intelligence is fixed will treat some students like naturals and others like hopeless cases. And both groups end up boxed in by those labels. It's the same with coaches. Some coaches are obsessed with stars. They focus on the ones who show early talent and ignore the rest. But a true growth mindset coach sees potential everywhere. They know skill can be developed. They reward hustle, discipline, and coachability, not just results. Those are the coaches who build champions, not because they find prodigies, but because they create them. There's also a powerful part of the chapter where Dweck talks about how parents handle mistakes. When a child messes up, parents with a fixed mindset might scold or show disappointment. How could you do that? They think they're teaching responsibility, but what the child actually hears is, "You're a failure." Growth-minded parents handle it differently. They don't ignore the mistake. They use it as a moment to teach. They help the child analyze what went wrong, what they learned, and how to do better next time. It's not about protecting their ego. It's about building resilience. And honestly, that applies to anyone in a leadership role. Whether you're a boss, a mentor, or even just someone people look up to, the way you respond to failure in others sets the tone for how they'll respond to failure in themselves. You can create either fear or confidence with your words. Dweck also talks about labels, things like the smart one, the talented one, the troublemaker. They seem harmless, but they lock people into identities that are hard to outgrow. I've seen that firsthand. You give a kid a label, and they start performing to fit it. The smart one avoids risks because they don't want to lose the label. The troublemaker stops trying because no one expects better. Labels simplify people, but they also shrink them. One of my favorite points in this chapter is about failure as feedback. Kids who grow up in growth-oriented environments don't see failure as something to hide. They see it as data, information that helps them adjust and improve. They understand that every skill, every success, every ounce of confidence is earned through repetition and resilience. That mindset becomes their default as adults. They don't expect life to hand them success. They build it. There's also a fascinating part where Dweck breaks down how adults can shift their own influence. It's never too late. You can rewire your language and the way you speak to your kids, your coworkers, even yourself. Instead of saying, "You're not good at this," you can say, "You haven't mastered this yet." That one word yet changes everything, turns a dead end into a path. Another part worth mentioning, discipline and accountability. A lot of people think having a growth mindset means being soft or overly positive. It's the opposite. Growth requires tough love. Not punishment, but honest feedback that holds people to a standard while still believing they can rise to meet it. That's the sweet spot. Compassion with expectations. Another part worth mentioning, discipline and accountability. A lot of people think having a growth mindset means being soft or overly positive. It's the opposite. Growth requires tough love, not punishment, but honest feedback that holds people to a standard while still believing they can rise to meet it. That's the sweet spot. Compassion with expectations. So if you're a parent, teacher, coach, or just someone who influences others, the question isn't, do I make them feel good? The real question is, do I make them stronger? Do my words build their confidence or their complacency? To wrap this up, what Dweck shows here is that mindset is transmitted. We don't just form it, we inherit it through the way others speak, praise, and correct us. But once you become aware of it, you can break the cycle. You can start speaking to yourself and others in ways that build growth, grit, and belief. Because the truth is, mindset is learned, and anything learned can be unlearned. Chapter 8, Changing Mindsets. The journey from fixed to growth. This final chapter is where everything comes together. The moment where Dweck turns theory into transformation. Because it's one thing to understand fixed and growth mindsets, but it's another thing to actually change how your mind works. And make no mistake, it's possible. But it's not easy. This chapter isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming aware. Once you start noticing the voice of your fixed mindset, you can challenge it, and that's when growth begins. Let's start from the truth. Every single one of us has both mindsets inside us. Nobody is purely fixed or purely growth. You might have a growth mindset about your work ethic, but a fixed one about relationships. Or maybe you're open-minded about learning, but you shut down when it comes to criticism. It's not black and white, it's situational. The key is recognizing which voice is driving your reaction in each moment. The fixed mindset voice says things like, I'm just not good at this. That person's better than me. If I fail, I'm a failure. Why even try? I'll look stupid. That voice isn't evil, it's protective. It's the part of you that fears rejection, embarrassment, and loss of control. Dweck explains that this voice usually forms early, when we equate mistakes with shame. But as adults, we have the power to reinterpret it. You don't silence it. You talk back to it. The growth mindset voice, on the other hand, sounds more like this. I can get better at this. What can I learn from this mistake? This challenge is uncomfortable, but it's making me stronger. I can get better at this. What can I learn from this mistake? This challenge is uncomfortable, but it's making me stronger. That shift in self-talk might sound small, but it changes the trajectory of your life. You stop being the victim of your fears and start becoming the driver of your growth. Here's one of the most important ideas Dweck brings up: awareness before action. You can't force a growth mindset. You have to notice when your thoughts drift into fixed territory, and then pause. Don't judge it, just recognize it. That moment of recognition breaks the automatic pattern. Once you see it, you can question it. Let's say you mess something up at work and immediately think, I'm not good enough. That's your cue. Stop and reframe it. I messed this up, but I can fix it. What's the lesson here? That's how rewiring starts. One thought at a time. Another concept Dweck explains here is mindset triggers. These are moments or environments that activate your fixed mindset, like being criticized, comparing yourself to others, or entering unfamiliar territory. The goal isn't to avoid those triggers, it's to use them as practice. Every time you catch yourself in that state and redirect your thinking, you're literally building new neural connections. It's mental strength training. She also touches on how people often misinterpret the growth mindset. Some think it means always being positive or never feeling insecure. Wrong. Having a growth mindset doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It means staying curious even when it's not. It's about showing up, failing, reflecting, and trying again. That's real confidence. Not arrogance, not fake optimism, but resilience. And here's something that stood out to me personally. You can't just adopt a growth mindset once and call it done. It's not a switch you flip. It's a practice. It's like fitness. You don't go to the gym once and expect to stay in shape forever. You keep training, you keep stretching that muscle. The same goes for your mindset. Dweck gives a few examples of people who transform themselves completely. Athletes who went from blaming others to taking ownership, students who went from failing to thriving, and professionals who learned to lead with humility in the common factor. They all faced the ugly parts of themselves, the parts that wanted comfort, validation, and control, and they didn't run from it. They used it as fuel. There's also a powerful part where she talks about organizations and teams adopting a growth mindset. When entire groups start valuing learning over ego, something shifts. People stop hiding mistakes and start sharing them to improve. They stop competing against each other and start competing with their own past performance. That kind of culture builds long-term success, not just. There's also a powerful part where she talks about organizations and teams adopting a growth mindset. When entire groups start valuing learning over ego, something shifts. People stop hiding mistakes and start sharing them to improve. They stop competing against each other and start competing with their own past performance. That kind of culture builds long-term success, not just short-term wins. Now, let's bring this down to a personal level. How do you start changing your mindset? Here's the framework that stands out from this chapter. Recognize your fixed mindset voice. Listen to the words you use when things go wrong. Are you blaming, excusing, or doubting yourself? Catch it. 2. Aim it. Call it what it is, your fixed mindset. That separates you from it. You're not the problem. Your thinking pattern is. 3. Respond with growth. Replace I can't with I can learn. Replace I failed with I'm learning. These aren't affirmations. They're reframes that train your brain to see possibilities. 4. Take small, deliberate action. Don't just think differently. Act differently. Try new things. Ask for feedback. Step into discomfort. Confidence doesn't come before action. It's built through it. Reflect regularly. Growth is messy. You'll fall back into old habits. Everyone does. What matters is noticing it and getting back on track faster each time. By the end of the book, Dweck makes something very clear. Growth mindset isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of yourself. The version that doesn't hide behind fear or image, but pushes forward, learns, adapts, and keeps evolving. For me, the most powerful takeaway is this. Mindset isn't about what you have, it's about what you choose. You can't always control your talent, your background, or your starting point, but you can always control your response. That's where real power lies. So the next time life hits you with a challenge, pay attention to which voice speaks first. Is it the one that says you're not enough? Or the one that says you're not there yet? That one word is the bridge between who you are and who you could become. And crossing that bridge every day in every decision, that's what growth really looks like. Closing reflection, mindset, the takeaway. At the end of the day, this book isn't just about success. It's about how you see yourself in the world. Fixed mindset says you are what you are. Your talent, intelligence, and worth are set. Growth mindset says you're a work in progress. That effort, learning, and resilience define you far more than natural ability ever could. What I took from it is simple. You either chase comfort or growth. One keeps you safe, the other makes you stronger. So whenever you hit resistance, in work, relationships, or life, that's not a wall, it's a test. The challenge isn't asking if you're good enough, it's asking if you're willing to grow. And the truth? The people who keep growing, they don't need to prove anything. They just keep getting better every damn day.